Tonight's big stories. President Marcos finally addresses the June 17 Ayungin confrontation, calling it a deliberate and illegal act by China. He also says the Philippines needs to do more now.
The NBI confirms that the fingerprints of Banban Mayor Alice Guo and Chinese passport holder Guo Huaping are a match. Senator Risa Teves says this is proof that Guo is a fake Filipino.
And President Marcos shrugs off the Duterte father and son's plan to run for Senate next year and says that the UniTeam alliance remains very much open for Vice President Sara Duterte.
Good evening. Welcome to the show. More than a week since the June 17 clash at Ayungin Shoal, President Marcos finally spoke up, calling it a deliberate and illegal act by China, but not an armed attack.
That's coming on the heels of Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin and Defense Secretary Gibo Chodoro making conflicting statements on what happened.
Marcos also acknowledged that when it comes to China, the Philippines now has to go beyond the diplomatic route. Maricel Halili with a big story tonight.
It's not armed. Walang pumutok.
Sir,
Hindi
bakit
tayo tinutukan ng baril.
Sorry, sir.
But it was a deliberate action to stop our people. They boarded a Philippine vessel and took the equipment from the Philippine vessel. And it is essentially an illegal action that was taken by the Chinese forces.
This was President Marcos's response to the June 17 incident in Ayungin Shoal, where the Chinese Coast Guard threatened and harassed Philippine naval forces. Many have been seeking clarity into the government's position on the matter, following conflicting initial statements from top officials. Was the incident a misunderstanding? President Marcos now firmly says it wasn't.
Because nung una, tinitignan pa lang namin yung data. Baka nagkamali lang. Pero mula nung napunta ako sa Westcom at nakausap ko si Admiral Torres, lahat na pati na yung mga seaman, sinabi ko ano ba talaga nangyari, maliwanag, hindi misunderstanding.
For now, the government has filed another note verbal against China to protest the incident. But President Marcos admits that more should be done.
We have over 100 already protests. We have already made the similar number of demarches. So we have to do more than just that. Kasi papatawag natin yung ambassador, sasabihin natin itong posisyon namin, hindi namin gusto yung mangyari, and that's it. But we have to do more than that, so we are.
Defense Secretary Gibo Chodoro also spoke to his U.S. counterpart Lloyd Austin via phone on Wednesday. According to a U.S. Defense Department readout, Austin reaffirmed the United States' ironclad commitment to the Philippines following China's action in Ayungin Shoal. Austin adds that the U.S. will continue to support the Philippines in defending its sovereign rights. He and Secretary Chodoro also discussed the importance of freedom of navigation wherever international law allows. For News 5, Maricel Halili, We Are One News.
And it is confirmed, Banban Tarlac Mayor Alice Guo is Chinese passport holder Guo Huaping. That's according to the NBI, which found that the fingerprints of the two matched. Ria Fernandez Obina with the report.
The NBI confirms that Mayor Alice Guo and Guo Huaping are one and the same. That's the revelation made by Senator Risa Ontiveros, who is leading the probe into Guo's identity and her alleged ties to illegal pogos in Banban Tarlac. Guo Huaping is the alleged Chinese identity of Mayor Alice Guo. In her Facebook post, Ontiveros says, "This confirms what we have suspected all along." She said, "Peking Pilipino si Mayor Alice," or should I say, Guo Huaping. She is a Chinese national masquerading as a Filipino citizen to facilitate crimes being committed by Pogo. The senator adds that this is a huge insult to Banban voters, the government, and the entire Filipino people. Ontiveros noted that this is the strongest evidence yet against Guo, which should be used to kick her out of her position. Senator Gretchen Ho says another strong evidence against Guo are bank documents found by the Anti-Money Laundering Council, where the mayor declared that the name of her mother is Wen Yilin.
That corroborates with the story ng mga taga-Valenzuela na pinapakilala si Wen Yilin or Winnie Lim as her mother, and also tugma yun sa BOI records na si Wen Yilin dineclare niya yung kanyang mga dependent children. Isa doon yung dependent daughter niya na si Guo Huaping. Wala nang lusot. Airtight na ito.
It has also been recently revealed by the Senate that there is another Alice Guo, a Filipino who has the same birth date and birthplace as the mayor. The NBI clearance of the other Alice Guo was released on November 3, 2005, just a day before Mayor Guo filed the delayed registration of her birth certificate. The camp of Mayor Guo had earlier refused to comment on this particular document, but Guo's lawyer says the documents should be scrutinized in the proper forum.
Kung gagamitin nila yan sa proper forum, edi magkakaroon kami ng pagkakataon na ma-scrutinize yung mga documents na yan. Malay mo, siya ba talaga yun?
Guo's camp is also protesting the possible cancellation of the mayor's birth certificate, as recommended by the Philippine Statistics Authority to the Office of the Solicitor General.
Yung mali-maling entry sa birth certificate, hindi naman iba yan eh. May mga ganun. Pero ang ibig ko sabihin, kung may mali doon sa birth certificate, kino-correct yan.
Okay.
O, kino-correct yan, may proseso tayo sa husyado dyan. Ang point lang, kung yan ang magiging basihan para tanggalan mo ng citizenship, ang isang tao, parang unfair masyado yan.
With the recent revelations, Senator Gatchalian confirms that the AMLAC is now preparing a case against Guo.
Ang target nila in 2 weeks. So, ang magiging cases nila against Alice Guo and the other personalities will be money laundering. So, in other words, may nakita silang evidence, very strong evidence na may money laundering involved.
He also called on the suspended Bamban mayor to attend the next hearing on the matter and face the allegations against her, including her supposed connection with a certain Cassandra Ong, who is said to be behind the Pogo hub in Porac, Pampanga. For News 5, Ria Fernandez, We Are One News.
Let's talk about more of the Alice Guo case with Senate Committee Ways and Means Chair Senator Win Gatchalian, who joins us on the line this evening. Good evening. Welcome to the show, Senator Win. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you. Good evening to our listeners and televiewers.
Senator, let's kick off with the latest on this case. NBI says the fingerprints match of Alice Guo and Guo Huaping. What was your reaction when you found out?
Well, there's no more debate that Guo Huaping is Alice Guo, and the real nationality of Guo Huaping is Chinese. Therefore, Alice Guo is also Chinese. And she should be removed from her public elected post because only Filipinos can be mayors in our country. So it's imperative that this evidence that came out of the NBI be used against her in her co-warrant case.
Hey, Senator, I want to know about the responsibilities here of the family, because we do know that the birth certificate was applied for when she was, I believe, 13. I mean, is there anything that the law says about minors having responsibilities over errors in their birth certificates, for one? Is she directly accountable for this, or does the responsibility lie with her parents, for example?
No, she's not accountable for this because she did not fill up the birth certificate. It's her father who went to the civil registrar and provided the information, albeit all the information there are a bunch of lies and not truthful information. For example, she mentioned in her, the father mentioned in the birth certificate that his name is Angelito Guo, but there's no Angelito Guo in our country. He also mentioned that he's married to Amelita Rial, who claims to be the kasambahay, but there's no Amelia Rial born in our country. So all the information that he gave in the birth certificate are all lies. And because of that irregular birth certificate, Alice Guo became Filipino. But now it's irrefutable that Guo Huaping is Alice Guo by that fingerprint validation by the NBI. So Guo Huaping and Alice Guo is one and the same.
Right, so that piece of news with the fingerprints just came out at around 4 to 5 p.m. So this is relatively new. But at the hearing yesterday, I heard Senator Risa calling, papatawag daw no, yung mga kapatid, I think including the parents of Alice Guo or Guo Huaping. Paano magbabago yung galaw ng investigasyon? Are we going to pursue? And kung hindi sumipot si Mayor Alice, are you going to pursue the contempt charges against her?
Well, we will talk about this in the committee. This information is quite new, so we have to talk about what angle are we pursuing or what new angle are we pursuing in the case of Alice Guo. But my advice to Alice Guo is to come clean and name all the persons responsible to the Pogo Hub. The Pogo Hub, definitely there are masterminds that are still at large, and Alice Guo should name all of them. I think there's already no more debate on her nationality. What she should do when she comes to the Senate is to name all those people responsible in the Bamban Pogo Hub and the Porac Pogo Hub.
Okay, Senator, can we ask, would you know anything about the Cassandra Lee Ong? Who is she and how is she involved in all of this?
Well, Cassandra Ong is the representative of Lucky South 99, where the Porac Pogo is located. And the registered company with PAGCOR operating that Pogo Hub is Lucky South 99. And if you look at the documents of Lucky South 99, Cassandra Ong is the main representative. At the same time, Cassandra Ong is also the primary shareholder of Whirlwind Corporation, wherein that's the landowner of that Porac Pogo Hub. So in other words, she's in both the Pogo company as well as the land company where the Porac Pogo Hub is located.
Go ahead.
Senator, I just, there seems to be two different investigations here as far as I could see. Number one, the investigation on her identity, and number two, on the Pogos, right? So with this latest development, the fingerprints match. Okay, fine. You can charge her with fraud for lying to authorities. You can strip her of her elective post. But the linkage to her and the Pogo remains weak. Did I understand that correctly? Because remember, she divested from that company for Baofu before she ran for office.
No, she didn't divest. She only assigned her shares. Selling and assigning are two different actions. There's no proof that she sold her shares. In fact, we checked the BIR, and we found out that the certificate for payment of taxes was not issued at all on that supposed lease, or not supposed sale. So there's no sale that went ahead with that with the shares related to Baofu land. She only assigned her shares to certain individuals.
Okay, at the hearing, she said she divested before she ran for office, so she was lying about that too.
She lied about everything. She lied about her nationality. She lied about not knowing her mom. She's living in a bunch of lies. Her whole life revolves around lying. So we cannot trust on what she's saying. Just imagine a person elected in Banban living in lies. She knows very well who her mother is. She knows very well who are her siblings. But whenever she campaigned, she would say she's Filipino. Whenever she solicits votes, she would say that she's born here. But those are just a bunch of lies. So we cannot trust anything to say.
Okay, you've also made some linkages at the committee hearings that Mayor Guo is also somewhat involved in Lucky South 99, the Porac Pampanga Pogo. Have we solidified this linkage and are we confident na pwede natin talagang pagdikit-dikitin tong dalawang kaso na ito?
We're still in the process of gathering evidence, and I just cannot divulge right now because PAOK is still investigating this matter. But the mere fact that Cassandra Ong is connected to Alice Guo, and there are evidence saying that, that means there's big probability that she's also connected to the Porac Pogo Hub.
Senator, as Reg mentioned, there are two issues here. One is on her identity, one is on the Pogos. For example, when it comes to her identity, you mentioned that the father was the one who put in the fraudulent information in the birth certificate. Ano po yung pwede nating ma-charge dun sa tatay? Mahahabol po ba natin given wala na sa bansa? And also, how do you establish knowledge of Alice Guo and awareness, full awareness on everything that is erroneous with the report? And what cases are you looking at filing now?
Well, his father should be charged with perjury. Lying in one's birth certificate is definitely against our laws. He perjured 4 times because there were 4 birth certificates that were issued, all with erroneous information. So he will be charged accordingly. However, both the biological mother and the biological father of Guo Huaping are no longer here in the Philippines. They're Chinese citizens. So they went back to China and they're not bound to come back to our country. In our information, Alice Guo is still here, or Guo Huaping is still here. The Bureau of Immigration has already issued lookout bulletins against her.
What about Li Wenyi, the mom, supposedly her real mom? Yeah, and her siblings as well that I'm not actually sure anymore kung iilan yung mga kapatid niya na lumulutang. But obviously, if her identity was fake, then it might also, we can safely assume that there's also going to be all these anomalies with the paperwork of the siblings. But being that they are private citizens, what will be the differences in handling the cases between Mayor Alice and her private citizen siblings?
Lin Wenyi is no longer here in the Philippines. She also went back to China. Again, she's Filipino. She's a Chinese citizen, so she can go back to China anytime and stay there, and not bound to come back here to the Philippines. So, based on the information from the Bureau of Immigration, both Guo Jiangjong and Lin Wenyi are back in China. As to the siblings, we're still checking with the Bureau of Immigration whether the 2 siblings registered in the BOI are still here in the Philippines.
Okay. How will this affect the movements of Mayor Alice Guo? I mean, when it comes to her businesses, the livelihood of her family, lahat po ba yun naka-freeze? And also...
Well, definitely she can...
Go ahead.
But since she is not Filipino, she cannot own land. So all the properties that she bought under her salary will be forfeited by government because she's not allowed to buy land. At the same time, the shares under her company, of which she owns majority, will also be forfeited because under our laws, foreigners cannot own companies related to land as well. So those are the repercussions after her birth certificate will be revoked.
And how does it affect your case that it seems like they've taken a turn and decided to stop cooperating? I mean, she stopped showing up to the Senate hearings, right?
Well, the Senate can issue a subpoena with it. So we issued a subpoena for her to come to the Senate. And if she doesn't comply, the Senate can also request for a warrant of arrest so that she can be bodily brought to the Senate.
Oh, pero Senator, that'll drag it out then, no? Kasi for instance, like with the case of Pastor Apollo Kibuloy, it's dragging out. So I guess if with Mayor Alice Guo, baka matagalan, I guess, if she does not cooperate, if they refuse to cooperate from this point on.
Well, the only way that this can drag on is she goes in hiding or she leaves the country. But based on our information, she's still in the country.
Senator,
So, yeah.
Senator, do you have information also? Are you looking at looking into how this all happened? I mean, she got an NBI clearance, she got the birth certificate, she got her nationality here, she was able to run for public office. I'm sure, I mean, there are people also who are responsible for allowing that to happen.
That's a very good question. And in fact, that's the most important question that we have to answer. How did a foreigner manage to be elected? How can a foreigner the people of Banban in voting for her? And how did she get this fake birth certificate? Definitely, there's problems. There's a lot of problems with our late registration process. And this is one of the legislative proposals that will come out of this investigation, is to revamp and reform our birth certificate and late registration process. We need to put accountable people and accountability to those who file for birth certificates and those who also fill up birth certificates. Because birth certificates in our country has become a very basic document that you can use to acquire many things. For example, your passport, your national ID. You can even run for office by holding a birth certificate. So it's a very basic document that can make you do many things here in the Philippines.
Right. To add to that, Senator Win, Gretchen's right? Also, lumalabas rin naman doon sa mga investigasyon that a lot of the other agencies were found to be remiss. In fact, some of the resource people were already saying that, because of this case, they've already taken certain measures, like the retirement agency is now taking fingerprints of all dependents, whereas before, hindi nila ginagawa yun. So there are already changes that are happening. And as we know, all these hearings over at the Senate, it's all in aid of legislation. As early as now, are we looking at certain specific pieces of legislation or amendments to existing legislations that you would want to cement?
Well, three things come to my mind because of this investigation. Number one is the legislation to completely ban Pogos. Pogos are a menace to our country, and you can see how Pogos destroys the peace and order situation of our country. Number two is to reform the birth certificate and late registration process of our country. You can see also how foreigners abuse our late registration process. And number three, PAGCOR's regulatory function and operation function should be separated. The reason why we are having all of these processes is because the conflict of interest in PAGCOR being an operator and a regulator at the same time.
It's a wide web, though, right, Senator? It's not just PAGCOR, it's not just the birth registration, it's also COMELEC, for instance. Or as in the case of Alice Guo, for instance, was she not endorsed by the former mayor before she even got on everyone's radar? She was nobody. Nobody knew her in Bamban, and she, became a mayor one day on the back of the endorsement of former Mayor John Feliciano. So what is their liability there?
Well, based on my analysis, there's no direct liability per se because Alice Guo might have told John Feliciano that she's Filipino and therefore she's eligible to run. And the former mayor probably took her word for it. And that's it. They campaigned together. So I don't think that's an issue. The problem here is when Alice Guo filed her certificate of candidacy, and in that certificate of candidacy, you have to swear that you are a Filipino. And she violated that oath, and she violated the information in her certificate of candidacy.
Is it still your belief that she's a Chinese asset, or this is a case of local corruption, i.e. they just paid off all these government agencies, a lot of people to get to the paperwork?
That's another important question. In fact, I'm thinking about the whole thing. Just imagine a person living in life, talking to people, pretending that she is born here, pretending that her mother's kasambahay. She went campaigning to Bamban, where they have approximately 60,000 people in terms of population. So she is living in life. And it takes a unique person. Dapat yung sikmura mo, bakapal para magsinungaling ka araw-araw. This is not a one-time lie. For us, people lying one time is already difficult. But for someone to lie all her life, and pretend that she is what she is, that takes a lot of that takes a different person.
Right. And Senator, since you're already here, actually wanted to tell you, because ikaw yung unang nagpalabas nung Bureau of Immigration, yung special investors visa, yung may picture, sa'yo po nang galing. Also, during one of the older hearings, nabanggit rin niya that they lived in Valenzuela at that time. And we all know that you were the mayor as well as the congressman of Valenzuela. Ano po yung kwento ng mga taga Valenzuela about her? Because we already sent our reporter to Bamban, and meron namang konting mga kwento rin from there. But it appears before siya nag-head to Bamban, taga Valenzuela siya. What did the mga people from there have to say?
Yeah, that's actually I told in my previous interviews that I personally know the lessor of their warehouse. The Guo family leased warehouses in a street the same as ours. In fact, that warehouse is not far from where we live. And I know the lessor very well. And according to the lessor, that they indeed lease some factories or some warehouses in their facility, and they have some operations there. So we also interviewed the people who work with the Guo family, and that's where we got the information that Lin Wenyi, or she goes by Wenyi Lin, is her mother, and Alice Guo introduced her to the workers and to the community as her mother. So that's where we got the initial information that Wenyi Lin is being introduced as her mother. And now it's true.
Okay, but as far as businesses were concerned, because they were here on a kind of like a business or investor visa, meron ba talaga silang legitimate businesses before all this Baofu, before Sun Yan and all of that?
We looked at the income statement of Triumph Embroidery. That's the business that they listed in their special investors resident visa, and that's the same business that was registered in Valenzuela. And in fairness, the minimum requirement to get the visa was there. It's $75,000, which is about around 3 million pesos. So with that capital, there was capital in that registered company. But subsequently, that company didn't make money. In fact, the filings that they gave to the SEC and as well to Valenzuela didn't make money during those times. So, in other words, the company was there. The company has the capital to enable it to qualify for that special investors resident visa. But subsequently, it lost money already, and I think eventually it closed down.
Senator, you're proposing an all-out ban on Pogos. Do you think the revelations are enough to get votes in the Senate? There is a House Bill number 10525 which was filed by Congresswoman Castro. Pero ang sabi niya sa amin when we ask her, parang medyo malabo pagdating sa taas kung makakapasa itong all-out ban or the Anti-Pogo Act.
I think here in the Senate, after all of these revelations, after the brutal crimes that were discovered in Porac, in Banban, and the other Pogo hubs, my feel is we can get enough votes to get a complete ban on Pogos in our country. It's better to debate on this on the floor so that we can show the pieces of evidence and also actual footages and pictures and the brutality that happened inside this Pogo hub. So my sense is we can get enough votes to completely ban this.
And last question from me, Sen, real quickly, Reg. Are you also looking into those with SIRVs, those that are here supposedly to invest, but kahit na, I guess, na bankrupt na yung business, somehow they're still here, and then obviously we know the rest, right, na yung iba nagiging citizens pa. Are we looking into that as well?
Yeah, we want to look at, this is another angle that opened up. Honestly, it came out during this investigation. There are 3 agencies that apparently issue visas. BOI for the investor visa, DOT for the retirement visa, and Bureau of Immigration for the regular visa. All of these agencies should be looked at, especially DOT and BOI. For example, we have also seen that people who are aged 35, 30 years old, requiring applying for retirement visas, which is quite unusual. At 30 years old, you'll be retiring in the Philippines. So we have to also look at this angle that these visa privileges that are being issued by these agencies are also being abused by foreigners coming to the Philippines and eventually staying here for a long time.
If you are successful with a blanket ban on Pogos, are we worried about the potential impact, fallout on the broader economy? I mean, I'm not just talking about the tax revenues that the Pogos remit to the government, whether that's $5 billion or $20 billion. I'm talking as well about the fact that they are one of the largest lessors of office space in the country. At one point, they were as big as the IT BPO segment. So there is a lot of money involved there. Are we worried about that?
Well, number one, they're not generating big revenue for our country that can affect our economy. It's less than 1% of the total revenues of the entire government. It's less than 0.5% of our entire economy. On top of that, there's no value that you can put to peace and order. Peace and order cannot be compromised. If there's one business, if there's any industry that will destroy the fabric of our society, that will destroy the peace and order situation of our country, we cannot compromise, no matter how big the revenue it generates for our country.
I have to dispute the 1% contribution, Senator, because the point is that they are a big lesser of office space in the country, right? So if they all have to pack up and leave, who will fill those office spaces? And that means if the real estate or companies, if the developers have to slow down, that then trickles into the real economy. That means fewer jobs, fewer investments. That's the part that I'm questioning at this point, whether we're prepared for that.
Well, whenever foreigners and foreign investors read that we're a hub for scamming, we're a hub for human trafficking, we have torture happening and kidnapping, who would invest in the Philippines? Serious investors and long-term investors will never invest in a country where you have human trafficking, rampant prostitution happening, all committed by criminal syndicates who are at large as of this point. We will probably get a handful of small investors, but the multinationals will send big, real investment, hard investment that can generate thousands of jobs in our country. That will never happen because of reputational damage.
Okay, we will continue following this story. For now, we will leave it there. Thank you so much for your insights and for talking to us at length. Senator Win Gatchalian, the chair of the Senate Committee on Ways and Means.
And we have some breaking news for tonight. The Department of Justice confirms the grant of the extradition request made by the Philippine government. The information was relayed to us by the Attorney General of Timor-Leste. We have won. That is the message from the Department of Justice. And it also says we look forward to the arrival of Mr. Teves so that he may finally face the charges against him in our local courts. We are referring, of course, to Congressman Arnie Teves, who is in Timor-Leste. We have been waiting for the decision on that. He has been freed.
They have been trying to extradite him. Arrest. Yeah,
Correct,
just about 4 days ago, he was released from house arrest. While we wait for the extradition deal to push through, and there we have it at around just before we went to air, the news broke.
And of course, he said before that he doesn't want to come back. He doesn't believe he will get a fair trial, but ito na nga, this is the latest.
What the Department of Justice says is that he has to come back and face all the charges against him here in the Philippine courts. We're going to be pausing for a quick break for now, but right after that, despite Vice President Sara Duterte quitting his cabinet, President Marcos says he believes that the UniTeam is still very much alive. The details when the big story returns. Keep it here.
Welcome back. You're still watching The Big Story here on One News. President Bongbong Marcos shrugged off the announcement of his Vice President Sara Duterte that 3 members of her family are running for the Senate in 2025. He also insists that the UniTeam alliance remains intact. Maricel Halili with the big story.
It's a free country. They're allowed to do whatever it is they want.
This was President Marcos's response to the announcement that 3 Dutertes are planning a Senate run in 2025. These are former President Rodrigo, Davao City 1st District Congressman Paulo, and Davao City Mayor Baste Duterte. Vice President Sara Duterte also said that her brother Baste also has plans to run for president in 2028. But for President Marcos, it's still too early to talk about this.
May pang mangyayari between now and 2028. And the only real situation will become clear in October sa filing.
Recall that Mayor Baste has become one of the staunchest critics of President Marcos. He has repeatedly called Marcos names in prayer rallies in Davao. And he has also called for the president's resignation back in January. That's why since VP Sara resigned from Marcos's cabinet, their allies have been branding the Dutertes as the new opposition. But despite the seeming rift between the Dutertes and the Marcoses, the president still believes that their UniTeam is still intact.
The UniTeam is still there, and if you look at the structure of the parties that ran together in the last election, that really hasn't changed.
But looking at the political parties who have renewed their alliance agreements under the UniTeam for the 2025 elections, only Marcos's Partido Federal and House Speaker Romualdez's Lakas, CMD remain. VP Sara's hukbong ng pagbabago and former President Joseph Estrada's Puwersa ng Masang Pilipino do not sign this alliance agreement. They were instead replaced by the Nationalist People's Coalition, the party of former Senate President Tito Soto. Marcos notes, though, that the UniTeam remains open for VP Sara, but he says this will depend on the Vice President's political decisions.
Depende kung saan siya papanig. That will determine whether or not that will be the biggest change in the UniTeam. Na kung mawala sa UniTeam si Inday Sara, yun ang pinakamalaking change kung sakali man.
As for the cabinet position vacated by the Vice President, Marcos says he will announce a new DepEd secretary by the end of this week. The President said he did try to talk to the Vice President about her resignation but simply respected her position.
She said, wag na lang natin pag-usapan. So I did not force the issue.
For News 5, Maricel Halili, We Are One News.
And after being vindicated of all drug charges filed against her during the Duterte administration, former Senator Leila de Lima is now optimistic about a possible ICC arrest warrant against the former president.
We are hopeful na mangyayari po yan yung pag-i-issue ng warrant of arrest. Kung sakaling mag-issue na nga ng warrant of arrest, yun ang isang usapin na medyo maselan tsaka medyo mahirap. Kasi nga, yung gobyerno, nasa gobyerno natin yan, kung tutulong talaga sila, kailangan ang tulong ng gobyerno. Pero hindi ito something indispensable because there are ways yung ICC how to do it. Magpapatulong siyempre sila, for example, sa Interpol. Now, ang magiging epekto nito, mahihirapan na ngayon si Mr. Duterte at saka yung iba pang sasampahan ng kaso na magiging subject ng warrant of arrest na basta-basta na lang mag-travel, pumunta kung saan-saan.
De Lima insists that the Philippines has remaining obligations to the ICC with regards to alleged crimes committed during the time that the Philippines was still a member. The former senator urged the Marcos administration to reconsider its position and to cooperate with the ICC's ongoing drug war investigation. But for President Bongbong Marcos, De Lima's acquittal is enough evidence to show the ICC that the Philippines does have a working justice system.
Maybe this is something we should show the ICC. Tignan mo, our judiciary is working properly. All our investigative services are working properly. Eto naman. And former Senator De Lima has been has been acquitted. I don't, what further comment can there be? Dumaan siya sa paghusga, na-acquit siya. So, we still stay with our position that the ICC has no jurisdiction in the Philippines because we have a working police force, we have a working judiciary, and do not require any assistance in that regard.
Pag-uusapan nga, no, yung pending or kung kailan lalabas yung arrest warrant.
And we've discussed that at length right here in the studio nung nagsalita si former Senator Sonny Trillanes.
And he's the one who says,
na siyang buwan na nabanggit?
June or July.
Middle of the year.
It's end of June.
And then,
not that we're rushing it, by the way. He's the one who said it.
And we tried to kind of confirm that with ICC Assistant Counsel, Attorney Cristina Conti. And sinabi niya, of course, wala siyang sinabing outright.
Before the year ends.
Pero sinabi niya, it would seem na parang same with the timeline of the ICC investigators, if we can remember. So, tignan natin, no? July na kaata, next week. So, magkakaalaman na rin naman tayo.
And we also know, of course, that the OJ is coming up with a briefer for President Marcos, outlining all of his options, legal options in terms of the ICC, whether or not to cooperate, what will happen, and so on and so forth. If he does not, and whether to sign the Philippines back up to the International Criminal Court.
Some say that the Dutertes are running to have immunity against this investigation of the ICC. I don't know what the legalities are, but of course that will afford them extra protection if they do win seats in the Senate.
In fact, I think you asked that to Senator Bato de la Rosa last night, right? And he gave pretty much that same answer. Now, another thing we were talking about last night with Senator Bato was interparliamentary courtesy. As we know, Congress is holding their own drug war investigation right now. And gusto nilang ipatawag as panauhin or resource people, former President Duterte as well as current Senator Bato de la Rosa bilang architect of the drug war and yung enforcer ng kanyang drug war. But according to Senator Bato, sabi ni Senate President Cheese Escudero, there is such a thing as interparliamentary courtesy, so he will not be attending unless former President Duterte decides to attend, in which case he will go.
But Senator Bato de la Rosa says he is in a quandary when it comes to that. Kasi syempre, loyal siya sa mga Dutertes, but at the same time,
He wants to cooperate?
Ayaw niya mag-set ng precedent of members of the Senate being summoned
bumigay
to the hearing.
Well,
Former spokesman Harry Roque has also said former President Duterte will not be attending that hearing. He says, and I quote, "As guaranteed by our Bill of Rights, Congress cannot compel FPRRD to be a witness against himself. Our former president firmly believes that the lower house is not the proper forum to investigate any criminal allegation against him."
Those are words we hear so often nowadays. Take it to the proper courts. Okay, so we'll see
Just
about that.
just a few hours left before the much-awaited U.S. presidential debate kicks off in Atlanta, Georgia, tomorrow, 9 a.m. Philippine time. For the first time in 4 years, President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump will engage in a live moderated debate in one of the CNN studios in Atlanta. This will be the earliest electoral debate in U.S. history, being held around 4 months before Election Day. Unlike past debates, though, there won't be a live audience. Also, because the last debate between the two got really heated, there are new rules this time, chief of which is that the microphones will be muted throughout, except when it's the candidate's turn to speak. Throughout the 90-minute debate, campaign staff are also not allowed to interact with their candidates, and there will only be 2 commercial breaks. And so with that, we will bring you a special coverage on this face-off with pre- and post-debate analysis with One News senior editor Ed Lingao. And yours truly will be delving into the impact of a second Biden or Trump presidency on the Philippine economy and, more importantly, national security. So catch Biden or Trump, the Philippine interest.
That's tomorrow, June 28th, Friday at 8 a.m. The debate is expected to kick off at 9. But you'll be doing some analyses, I think, before
We will be
that.
on air from 8 a.m. outlining what the Philippines is, what the stakes are for the Philippines in this hugely pivotal elections. I know we believe every election is pivotal, and they are in their own right. But this is to borrow a phrase that I heard online, one for the ages, if not the ages.
It
Remember,
must be difficult to moderate that debate.
81 years old for Biden, 78 for Trump. This is a debate of the ages.
It's literally
Debate of the ages.
Maybe change the S.
I don't think it's going to be that difficult because they're muting the mics, remember?
Yeah.
So
I know. I was
last
just thinking,
time they debated,
while you were reading that, I'm like, this sounds really familiar. That's how I think how we conduct our debates here, muting microphones.
Totoo naman. Oo nga.
so they
all
don't
these
end
bizarre
up talking over each other, which is what happened when
Well,
they last saw each other
There's a headline
October
by
2020.
the Washington Post, the presidential debate that could make or break CNN.
That's also true. The stakes are very high for CNN. We all know TV viewership is down. That's no secret. And there's been huge leadership shakeups at the CNN over the past few years, and they are in a lot of pressure as well to prove that they can still hold a crucial role in moments like this.
So for sure, lots to watch out for tomorrow. Multiple implications across multiple
So you'll be on
fronts.
8 to
From
9
8
for the
a.m.
analysis, and then
and
9
again
until
from
after.
10:30 onwards for the post-debate analysis. Moving on now to other news, organizers of the Boss Ironman Motorcycle Challenge are seriously considering the suspension of the annual endurance run for the next year. That's after House lawmakers questioned the safety of the event, with 2 deaths and several accidents already reported. Representatives and LGU officials also raised concern about the lack of regulation in conducting the motorcycle challenge since it's done on national roads. The Boss Ironman Motorcycle Challenge requires participants to cover 1,200 kilometers in a span of 24 hours, prompting a lot of overspeeding and also sometimes road collisions.
We are strongly thinking or contemplating of the event not to push through. The realization of the board is that it cannot be on the road because the situation now and 17 years ago are totally different. Sobra ng daming sasakyan, sobra ng daming mga motor.
Taking a look at the numbers, I see 20 participants injured, 19 non-participants injured, and 3 dead.
Oh, wow.
Ano kasi, these races,
Those are serious numbers.
They're not the same as like marathons. They even have this for bike races, like bicycle races, where you kind of just finish X amount of kilometers within X amount of time, and then it's largely medyo bahala na along the way.
1,200 kilometers in 24 hours. That's a lot.
It is
Of course, you can understand the impulse to speed.
Yes, correct.
On our very limited road network and a lot of traffic passing by. But I think we have more from good news from our sports front.
Ito na, patapos na. Here's something to watch out for. Our tennis ace Alex Eala is now 1 step away from entering the main draw of Wimbledon. Eala beat Slovenian Tamara Zidansek in the second round of the Wimbledon qualifiers. She battled back from a first-set loss and forced a decider against the 14th seed Zidansek. If Eala will win against Lulu Sun of New Zealand in the third round of the qualifiers, she will be the very first Filipina to enter the main draw of a pro Grand Slam event.
How exciting.
I know, she is, of course, our tennis fan
I
here.
love how sports, rounds everything up.
Yes.
At the end of it.
Yes.
always
And, yet,
the best
and
who
again,
gives us
another
good vibes.
Filipina athlete, right? That's raising the flag for the Philippines.
But Wimbledon, aren't you excited?
Very excited, and I hope she makes it to the main draw.
Compete sa Wimbledon.
I don't think that's the main draw. Because at Wimbledon, don't forget, there are a number of matches at play at any given point in time, right? Because there's
many players.
thousands of ranked players.
And you don't know how long the game is going to run for.
Yeah, it could go for 2 hours, could go for 10 hours. Yeah, sometimes.
Which is why that's her favorite sport to watch.
No, because it really is interesting in its own right, and it's so nice to see to be able to follow Alex's career, so young and already so promising, right? She trained under the Rafa Nadal camp, of course, and she sacrificed a lot, like most athletes have. She being away from her family, school, and everything. And so, yeah, and she's so close. And by the way, I might point out, battling back from the first set loss is not easy, because this is very much a mental game as it is physical. And so when you're one set down, it's like,
You have to have that kind of mental strength.
I don't know if you guys saw the Dartmouth commencement speech of Roger Federer talking about how it is very much a mental
You
game.
need to be able to bounce back from mistakes
Exactly.
quickly.
When you're playing for a point, that point is the most important thing in the world. But after it, if you lose that point, that has to go behind you. You have to go get past it.
Whether you
immediately.
win or you
Otherwise,
lose or you do well with a certain point, yeah, it has
exactly, and then that point is over. And that kind of mental dexterity, that's not something everyone has. So,
So
hats off to
I
Alex.
think Roger Federer's Dartmouth commencement address, I think that's a good note to end on tonight. So that's it for the big story.
You can watch that on YouTube. We are One News, all sides, all the time.
And you could also watch the U.S. presidential debate show tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. here on One News. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good night.